Welcome to the Superintendent's recommended fiscal year 2026 operating budget presentation.
This budget will focus on the fundamentals
and invest in priorities that move. Now please welcome Superintendent Dr. Thomas Taylor.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving up some family time to be with us this evening, especially so close to the winter break and holidays. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us, whether you're online or whether you're in person today. We have a lot of important things to talk about, and as excited as I am to be here and to be the superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools, we're at an inflection point. And this is going to be a serious discussion, and we have a lot to talk about. So to that end, this is a formal presentation of the fiscal operating budget for MCPS for fiscal year 26, and it is my presentation to the Board of Education, and I'm delighted to welcome them here this evening. And I'd love for you to stand to be recognized when I call your name. Our president of the Board of Education, Julie Yang, is here. Brenda Wolf. Rita Montoya. Laura Stewart. And on the other side of the room, Carla Silvestri. Natalie Zimmerman, and Praneel Suvarna, our student member of the board. I also want to thank our funding partners for being a part of this journey and a part of this process. This is a collaborative effort when talking about our resources and how we allocate them. And I want to thank our local funding partners that are here today because technically, council is already off on break, and so making some time for your school system, it is so important. And Council President Kate Stewart and Council Vice President Will Jawando, please stand to be recognized. We're delighted that you're here. I also want to thank our state legislators who have been a part of conversations this fall and have been an active part of our dialogue as we have been building our budget and talking about some of our needs throughout the fall. Joining us also is our county executive, and Mr. Eldridge, we have a seat right up here. Come on up. Mark, we've got a seat for you right up front. There you go. Great seat, best seat in the house. So thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot that you're here for this conversation and that we can be a part of this conversation together because we do have some important things to talk about. I also want to thank the many folks from our association leadership and our association members that are here. This is the lifeblood of our organization, and how we serve our students are through the caring adults that are committed to our kids in MCPS. We also have a bevy of leaders that are shaping this room, whether they are community leaders or leaders in our schools, and I just want to thank you for making the time to be here today. Several principals and their very busy schedules are also here today. There's countless school activities that are happening throughout the district, and that you're here tonight means an awful lot. I also want to make special note of the team that works very hard behind the scenes to put together a lot of these facts and figures and a lot of the things that you will see today. And they cross all strata of our organization, but it is our budget and finance team led by our brand new CFO, Yvonne Alfonso-Windsor, if you'll please stand. Two final notes. We are having Spanish translation today, and we also have an ASL interpreter. This is Ephraim Young. He is our ASL interpreter this evening, and he'll be also casting some of this in our digital format as well. We will have Spanish translations available for our slide decks and some of our other materials later as well when we share this on the web. which brings us to the topics for today. We do want to talk about us. We want to talk about our landscape and MCPS and where Montgomery County is and what MCPS's role in Montgomery County is and the broader economic landscape of Montgomery County, Maryland, the United States, and even the world. And we want to talk about some of our strategies, how we intend to meet the needs of Montgomery County and our school system in a really meaningful way. And this might be a little bit of a difference than what you're used to, but we are going to go through the numbers. And we're going to do that together. And hopefully it will illuminate a little bit of our budget experience and showcase some of our needs in a meaningful way. I do want to close this evening by talking about our return on investment and commitments that we are prepared to make to Montgomery County that are going to bring MCPS to a place of excellence and to honor the high expectations that our community has for MCPS. And so I look forward to that. And before we close, I'm going to hope to empower everybody who is listening to be an active part in this budget process, to share your preferences, to share your ideas, and to communicate those preferences and ideas as we look ahead to our very bright future and unleash the potential of our young people that we serve. So let's talk about why we're here. This is the audience participation part. So why are we here? Students, yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that somebody wasn't like, budget. That's true too, but we're here to talk about the students, absolutely. We're here to talk about these guys. And together we're going to do a little bit of a magic trick. Now, principals have done this magic trick with me before. Some of our central office have done this magic trick with me before, but this might be new for some of our community folks that are here today. So we need a magic word. What magic word are we going to use? Spreadsheet. Mr. Stein, that is not a magic word. It might be for today, but as a math teacher, I get that that's a magic word. But what magic word are we going to use? Let's find something that might be elementary friendly for magic words. Please, that's a good one. Ooh, I like that one a lot. Any other magic words we want to try? Kaboom. Kaboom, I like that one. That's a good one. So I think we're between please and kaboom. What do you guys think? Kaboom. Okay. On the count of three, we're gonna test out our magic word, and we're gonna need as much energy and audience participation as we possibly can. You guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Kaboom! God, that was so good. Oh, wow. Look at what we did. We were able to turn these guys into these guys. And that's the magic of MCPS. Is that we get to take these wonderful kids that we've been entrusted with and we transform them into outstanding adults who contribute positively to this community. It's a pretty magical thing, pretty exciting. If I were to sum this up into a phrase or even just a few words, we unleash the potential of young people. And that's a pretty bold idea, but it is so important. We inspire young people to become great adults. That's pretty fantastic. And so this is a great place to start because this is a part of who we are and it's a part of our values. And our values are pretty clear. And if you are curious about the school system's values, around every corner in this place you can see a list of these values articulated. It's in a conference room right behind this wall. It's in the hallways upstairs and throughout this building and in our schools, but it's also embodied in our classrooms. These aren't just the values of the Montgomery County Public Schools and the Montgomery County Board of Education. These are Montgomery County's values because Montgomery County values public education and they value educators. And we hear this time and time again because it's true. And because it's what's important to us. And this is a great foundation from which we can start. Now, MCPS has a good school system, we really do. And oftentimes we see things in the news that frustrate us and that make us angry and that make us upset. But there's a lot to celebrate in MCPS and things that we should be very proud of. Tonight, we're going to talk about some good things. And tonight we're also going to talk about some things that haven't gone well. And we're going to talk about those things with a lot of severity. Well, this is a great example of some of the things that have gone really well. We are proud of the fact that we have a growing number of nationally board certified teachers. These are educators that are so committed to their craft that they are willing to do years worth of study to expand their knowledge to give their very best to kids. It's outstanding. Would I like to see our national Title I distinguished school number jump up? You bet. But I think it's also a great artifact of our success that the U.S. Department of Education's highest honor, the National Blue Ribbon, we have 45 National Blue Ribbon schools, and we added 2 to the list this year, Woodfield Elementary School and Bells Mill. So congratulations to Bells Mill and Woodfield Elementary School. That's just such a huge accomplishment. It is the pinnacle. We are also one of the highest rated school systems in Maryland. We constantly top the list of successful schools at the elementary, middle, and high school level. These are all things that we should be very proud of. But we're also a big system, and there are a lot of numbers associated with MCPS. Like last year, we served over 18 million meals. We are the largest restaurant chain in Montgomery County. I got to tell you, we've got 211 locations, and they all serve fantastic meals. There is a little nibble at your place setting today. We'll get into that in a moment, provided by our Food and Nutrition Services team. But we have some really amazing people who work behind the scenes on a very large scale to provide service to our kids. We travel over 100,000 miles a day on our buses. That is pretty amazing. We have a huge number of kids that are going off to college and a huge number of kids that are prepared with industry certifications every single year. These are some remarkable statistics that we should be proud of. But we also have a pretty massive footprint. Our footprint is over 26 million square feet in our buildings. It's a lot of building space to maintain. It's a lot of things to look after. It's a lot of things to process. And so when we see big budgets and big numbers in a budget, we need to put some of that into context. And we need to keep that context and understand that we're servicing not just one school, not just 2 schools, not 20 schools, but over 200 campuses that serve children and even a handful more that provide some operational value to the district. The most important statistic is this, is that the children in this community, age birth to 18, are almost 20% of the population in Montgomery County, but they're 100% of the future. And so the investments that we make in our kids today will pay dividends forever. And that is an important thing for us to think about. A lot of people have told me in community meetings and in conversations that I've had that MCPS has changed, that the demographics of MCPS have changed. And yeah, they did like 35 years ago. They sure did, but not recently. A lot's changed recently, like the internet and artificial intelligence and our reliance on fax machines. A lot of things have changed, but our demographic breakdown is not really one of them. And so I absolutely love this slide that I stole from our strategic planning team who'd put this together to kind of show a realistic look of our demographic makeup. But there's something that's missing from this demographic makeup that has changed. And it is the increase in poverty in our community. And it has jumped significantly. This has had a substantial impact in our school. And this is some of the hidden numbers behind some of the changing dynamic in MCPS. And we'll circle back on this topic and talk more about what this means for us and what it means for our service delivery. But it's important to know that where we associate change, we need to put it in the right place. And this is a very real issue for Montgomery County. It's a very real issue for our school system. another very real issue for us. Performance that we're not proud of. We're very concerned about our performance in literacy, our performance in mathematics. These are things that represent a gap that we absolutely need to close, and there is an urgency associated with this gap. And this gap is not new. We've actually made progress over the last few years, but that progress has been so incrementally small each year, even prior to the pandemic, that it really does trouble us in terms of how we might address this on a larger scale. It's important that we confront these issues, not because we want to point out low performance or because we want to be mad at somebody or because we're frustrated at how something had worked in the past. That's not the point. We need to look ahead, and we need to be invested on what happens from here and where we go from here. Because the past is the past, but our future is what we make it. And the investments that we make today are the ones that will have an impact on tomorrow. Unfortunately, this performance is an indication of something. It's a reflection of how we are as an organization. And sadly, our organization is perfectly designed to get the results that we're getting right now. And so there are things that need to change. There are things that need to change about our structure. There are things that need to change about our culture. There are things that need to change about how we respond to issues. And we need to be willing and able to confront those changes with an open heart and an open mind. We've dug ourselves into quite a big hole. We sure have. We've dug ourselves into a hole financially with some of the decisions we've made. We've dug ourselves into a hole academically. And the first rule of holes, does anyone know what the first rule of holes is? Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Yes, the first rule of holes is to stop digging. And so if we are going to backfill some of these holes, and if we're going to make progress, we actually need to stop making some of our existing problems worse. So as much joy as I have in being here and being your superintendent and representing this particular spend plan, I'm going to promise you that it doesn't bring me joy to bring you a budget that also is very focused on filling holes and setting right a direction for our future together. And I want to talk about our landscape, because right now our landscape and the world that we're looking at feels pretty bleak. It feels desertish at times. We look at changes in the federal government, we look at federal revenue, and we are projecting a decrease in federal revenue. We are projecting relatively flat revenue at the state level. And though there are some glimmers of hope locally in Montgomery County, we all know that that hangs in the balance of a lot of other factors. And this is complicating our landscape. To add to that landscape, our educators, our leaders, our principals have been working so hard coming out of the pandemic, the expectations that weigh on them, even things that are very well-intentioned, like the blueprint for Maryland's future, can weigh heavy on their backs. And it has become like running a marathon through the desert. And that is what the feeling of our educators and their experience is like. And it makes it hard to recruit people into this industry and to inspire them to want to work with kids, knowing that this is going to be a tough haul, knowing that there are going to be uphill battles to climb, knowing that every step you take is going to have the resistance of sand behind it. These are real challenges. And it's going to take teamwork for us to get through them. Now, during the pandemic and in the years immediately after the pandemic, we did have one saving grace. We received a slice of cake from the federal government in the form of ESSER funding, which did help us with an infusion of revenue to help offset some of the challenges that we knew both from an environmental standpoint and also from a mental health standpoint and from an academic standpoint, so that we could backfill some of that gap and address some of those challenges. Well, those ESSER funds and that support, it's run out. And preparing for that fiscal cliff has not been the focus of the school district over the last couple years to the volume that it probably should have been, because the fires have burned so bright and because the challenges have been apparent around every corner. So unfortunately, it's a time for vegetables. Today's vegetable is my least favorite vegetable, broccoli. Now, our former board president, Ms. Silvestri, loves vegetables, and she didn't quite get this metaphor because this is a delight for her, and we are thrilled that you are so happy with the raw broccoli that we have for our demonstration for today. But what we offer is not a budget that even has ranch dressing or cheese sauce or any of the dips or accoutrements that come with broccoli. It's just broccoli. Because there's foundational work that needs to happen, and we need to eat our vegetables before we can have our cake. So with that, I wanted to let you know that this slide deck is going to be available online, so you don't have to read it if you're looking at this online or you're looking at this here. But I put this up for you to know that we know what goes into making a great school district. We know. It's a relatively short list of things that if we execute very well, will move the needle for MCPS in a really meaningful way. But we have some hurdles and some hills to climb of our own. And so I think it's probably best that we hear from one of our parents to share some of their experience as to what they're experiencing when they interact with MCPS today.
Cuando nos dimos cuenta que mi hija tenía dificultades, te estoy hablando primero, segundo grado, era súper hiperactiva. Ahí fue donde yo me di cuenta que otra mamá también estaba pasando algo similar y me dijo, la escuela te puede ofrecer este plan 504. Lo trajimos a bordo a la escuela. No podía haber positivismo, ayuda, sentía que mis palabras eran vanas. Debería de haber más información, debería ser una orientación más sobre el plan 504 para todos los padres.
She said that her words were in vain. And I got to tell you, that experience is one that I've heard time and time again in the last several months when I've interacted with people in a town hall setting, parents that I've bumped into in our community, even talking to some of our educators and just people on the street even. They have communicated that navigating MCPS and responding as a parent and as a community member has been difficult, and it's been a real challenge for them. And it has negatively impacted their experience, and it's negatively impacted their child's experience, and it doesn't have to be that way. So how do we fix this? Seems like a massive problem, a really significant problem. Well, I'm fond of this one particular saying, and the teammates that I have in the room will definitely know this, is that I think we need to change our culture to be one of continuous improvement. We need to be a school district that is committed to getting a little bit better every single day. As a matter of fact, we can't be the best at every single thing. I know, it's MCPS, we try. But we can become the best at getting better and committed to continuous improvement in a meaningful way. We don't have to be sick in order to get better. We may have a cold at the moment right now, but we do not need to be sick in order to improve and to get better. This is an important part of our work and what we need to be about moving forward. And so my principals and teammates in the room have also seen this picture as well. And so this is a question for some of my community folks that are in the audience. I have to ask, what on earth is the biggest room in Montgomery County? Because I got to tell you, this is a pretty big room, but it's not the biggest room. I've been in some schools that were pretty big. I was at Seneca Valley. That cafeteria was pretty big. Yeah, I called you out, Ricardo. Thank you very much. What are some other big rooms in Montgomery County? Any guesses? Marriott. Yeah, Marriott in North Bethesda. That's got a pretty big room. Any other big rooms out there? You think? Soccerplex. Do they have rooms, or is it just the big open space? Absolutely. Outdoor classroom, right? Indoor too? Yeah, they do have indoor spaces. I would say that's a pretty big room. Interestingly enough, those are all very big rooms, but they pale in comparison to MCPS's room for improvement. Groans. Well, we have a lot of room for improvement. And as good as we are at some things, we definitely have room for improvement. We have room for improvement in trust. We have room for improvement in teamwork. We have room for improvement in how we handle mistakes. We have room for improvement in transparency and accountability. We have room for improvement in creating a culture of support. We have room for improvement in performance. We have a lot of room for improvement in equity and how we deal with racism in our school system. We have a lot of room for improvement in communication and how we engage with people in a really meaningful and genuine way. Those things are big rooms for improvement, and they need attention because these are not problems that are just going to go away by themselves. They need focus, and they need a lot of support. And so the budget that I'm bringing forward today is one that focuses on our fundamentals, and let's talk about what that means and what that might look like. When we're focused on the fundamentals, we're focusing on the things that matter most, and we're drawing a through line through our values, our goals, and the resources that we have available to implement strategies that respond to our goals. In all the things that we think, say, and do, there needs to be alignment. And so we have some room for improvement there too. But the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing in education is? It's teaching and learning. It's the classroom. That's what's most important. And so there are two levers that we pull in public education that are really particularly important. We create these really memorable learning experiences that are engaging, they're accessible, they're aligned, they're differentiated, but they inspire our kids to do really great things. And we do those in really remarkable learning environments that are safe, welcoming, and inclusive. This should be our footprint. That should be our roadmap. That's what we need to be attentive to. Now, the good news is that based on all of the folks that I've spoken to in the community, they love their educators because they are doing a great job at the learning experience part. Doesn't mean there's not room for improvement, but we are getting there in that space. We have a long way to go in the learning environment space in order to provide the high quality education that we hope for each and every kid in MCPS. So I want to highlight 7 strategies, and then I want to dive deep into 4 of them, and then we're going to jump to the numbers, and we're going to get to the good stuff, and then I'm going to send you home for the evening. So bear with me here for a minute. Our how is very focused on just a handful of things. One, we do need to look at what we expect for our kids and for our community of learners and setting new high expectations for excellence in our schools, bottom line. How do we do that? Well, we have a great team to do that. So we need to invest in the people in our school system that make it all happen. And we do have great team members here in Team MCPS, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. We have to do that in safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning environments, and we need to be about continuous improvement. We need to do a much, much better job about how we support schools from the mothership. And I'm talking about the building that we're in right now. And for those of you who are curious what the mothership is, it is 15 West Goody Drive in Rockville, Maryland, okay? We need to be focused on what happens in our school buildings and how we can support our school buildings in a very intentional and direct way. And we need to have our work performed through an equity lens where we're differentiating our support to the areas that need it most. And finally, we need to change our game plan of how we support this school system for sustainability, and the things that we do over time that are fiscally responsible, the internal controls that we have, metering things out year over year over year versus trying to do everything all at once. We need to have a better game plan and a better strategy that aligns to a strategic plan, and we can do it. So let's tackle just a handful of them. I've got 4 that I want to touch on. The first strategy is investing in our people. And so we're going to hire Patrick Mahomes. He has won 3 Super Bowls. He is excellent. You know, I think that the Commanders have an excellent quarterback, but this guy does have 3 rings. It's been pretty exceptional performance on the field. And for the low price of $45 million, counsel, you too could have an NFL quarterback on the roster. Truth be told, his annual contract and his stats are very impressive, but not as impressive when you drill it down to just one pass that he makes. It is worth $62,586 every time he throws a ball into the air. Coincidentally, compared to one of our first-year teachers, he does a little bit better per pass than our first-year teachers do for an entire year's worth of service. Good news. We're getting a great return on investment for our first-year teachers. The tough part about being a first-year teacher in Montgomery County is that you sometimes get a little bit of a bad rap in the education space in Maryland, because everybody thinks that MCPS teachers are highly compensated relative to other teachers in Maryland. And the truth be told, that might be technically true, but there are some other confounding factors that play into that space. And I want to detail some of that for you. We're also a little bit of an anomaly in Montgomery County because 70% of our workforce actually lives in Montgomery County, which is truly phenomenal given the costs of living in Montgomery County. It's a big deal. Nearly 3/4 or a little over 3/4 of our workforce also, our teacher workforce also has more than 10 years of experience. This is really good and it's really bad. And let me tell you why it's really good, because we have great educators who are experienced in the classroom, and let me tell you why it's really bad. Not only do our experienced teachers cost the taxpayers a little bit more, but it also is an indication every year that this number goes up, that there aren't people entering the education profession to backfill for the people who leave. And that's a real danger, and we need to think about how we sustain this as an industry and how we welcome new people into this industry. So let's see how we'd make out as a first-year teacher, and I want you to follow along with me for a little bit. First-year teacher salary is in the second column there. Annual salary of $62,000 a year. An average teacher, $87,000. Paraprofessional, I also threw in here at $39,000, and a bus driver at $37,000. I took their monthly salary and what that looks like. I took out their pension plan. I took out their health care deduction. We do okay in the healthcare deduction space. I also took out their taxes and the average rent in Montgomery County. I took out utilities, phone, internet, and some modicum for groceries. And I also put in a car payment and insurance, which was below the average for our area. And so our first-year teachers are in the hole $300 a month just to work for us. Our paraprofessionals are in the hole $1,000 a month. Our bus drivers are in the hole $1,500 a month. And our average teachers are just barely getting by. This is tough. So yes, Montgomery County does have a higher compensation for educators when relatively compared to other localities in Maryland. But other localities in Maryland aren't living in Montgomery County at the same time. So making sure that we offer a competitive wage, making sure that our people can afford to work here, because right now it is a challenge. You have to cohabitate with some of these categories just to make ends meet. That needs to be a part of our conversation, and it needs to be a part of our discussion. when we're talking about investments. I'm going to add a little bit of salt onto this wound. To be a first-year teacher also means that you qualify for housing assistance in Montgomery County. That's pretty tough. Roughly 30% of Montgomery County is what we would call asset-limited, income-constrained, yet employed. There was a term for this when I was a child. It was called working poor. And so our educators are not the venerated positions that we espouse them to be all the time, but rather fit into a very uncomfortable phrase in an uncomfortable category that does not reflect our community values. And that needs to change. So we do need to focus on recruiting the best and keeping the best and right-sizing our benefit structure, improving our working conditions, providing autonomy where it's needed so that our folks can feel fulfilled in their workplace and supported. And we need to shore up things in the budget that are guaranteed as part of their contract, things like tuition reimbursement. And we also need to recognize the hard work of our very hardworking people. And these are areas that we can improve. And these are things that we can do. And we can do them together. It won't be hard. Just like it won't be hard for us to make sure that every kid walks into a school that they're proud of, they feel safe in, and that is welcoming and inclusive. A lot of this may jump right at you, and you may say, oh my gosh, why is he talking about the capital improvements budget? And some of this does have some capital expense tied to it, but there are ongoing maintenance needs throughout our school system, ongoing safety and security needs, and you're going to see those things reflected in our budget too. We also owe it to our employees to provide a safe place for them to work. And if should anything adverse happen, that we have things like AEDs and resources available to respond in emergency situations. Those things become really, really important. So let's talk about our buildings for a little bit. Our schools that were built before the pandemic, the average age of our buildings is 28 years old. That could use some improvement. Some of our buildings that have gone without major capital improvements are really starting to show their age. I don't put this on here because they need CIP attention. I put this on here because they need attention. There are a lot of our schools that need repairs, that need work orders to be cleared, and there's a maintenance team that does that. Except that we haven't been investing in our maintenance team like we should for the past several years. As a matter of fact, our strategy for maintenance is really not awesome. It's not been very effective. And when we freeze our maintenance team and we hold steady on maintenance and we don't increase proportionally with the size of our school district, we find ourselves in a situation where critical projects keep getting kicked down the road every year. Critical projects like HVAC. And if you question whether or not we have HVAC issues, I would like to invite everyone to come to our schools in August, in May, and December, January, February, and any month that is not room temperature. We have some really significant issues that do need to be addressed, and these are long-standing issues, and the reality is that they will get worse with time, not better with time, and they will get worse with neglect, not better with neglect. Same goes for our restroom renovations, which was very important to the student group that I talked to earlier today. Though it's a little bit behind the walls and hard to see, our electric infrastructure is also pretty critical. I would like to thank artificial intelligence for this image of a school on a cliff, but this is very representative of where I feel like we are in terms of our facility maintenance right now, and it's a little scary. The part that's so scary is that these are really big numbers and really terrifying numbers right now, but they could be so much worse if they are continually neglected. And that is the concern that I have, is that we don't really have a plan for sustainability over the long run, and we need help to have that plan in place. Something that I'm particularly passionate about is how might we adjust the services to our schools in a meaningful way to give a little bit more service. I took a look at a list of the different tiers that we have in MCPS and the different levels of navigation. This actually came from about 5 different emails that I cobbled together and it was parents that were talking about the different people that they had talked to try to get a resolution to a problem, and all of the layers that they navigated. Now, good news, the deputy superintendent COO layer doesn't even exist anymore, but there are lots of layers that are not reflected on this list even, which is a little scary. At my last count, I think it was 14 or 15 different layers in our organization. That is really difficult for our community to respond to, which begs the question, what really should the role of central services be? And how can we be better? Well, we would have to align some of our functions to better meet the needs of our schools by having some of our folks stationed at our schools and serving them in that way. Having a different approach to customer service and responsiveness. Having clarity on roles and responsibilities and how we communicate. Those things would go a long way. If I were to give you a graphical image of where we are kind of as a school system, we have a lot of positive things that are happening, but they are kind of like random acts of improvement. There are bright spots everywhere in this district, and in every single school that we have in this district, there are positive things that are happening, but they're not all going in the same direction. And if this was a continuum, I'd say that we're like right here on the continuum. And the role of central services is really to draw that outline of where the direction is going and make sure that we're truing up our team to following a strategic plan and a North Star. So with that, I want to share something that's a little bit disturbing and a little bit frustrating. So over the past 5 years, we have kind of flattened out in terms of our enrollment. We've gone from 157,000 students right before the pandemic to right under 155,000 students, and that's just K through 12. That's not pre-K, and that's not early education programs. It's just our K to 12 student population. Effectively, we've decreased by 2%. During that same period of time, our central office staff has increased by 24%, going from over 2,200 employees to over 2,800 employees. I can't get my head wrapped around it because the level and an affect of service either hasn't changed or in many ways has actually gotten worse. We need to change. And it's not because we have ineffective or bad people. We do not. We actually have very talented and very strong people, but we have to row in one direction. And we have to do it together. And we could be a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more focused and a little bit more effective. So to that end, we've initiated a reorganization. And that reorganization was to fill some gaps and some holes. The district that I came into this summer did not have someone in charge of technology who was in the room to make critical decisions that impacted the district at the senior cabinet level. We had people who supervised technology, but not somebody who was from technology. That's a big gaping hole. Also, if equity is so critically important to our district, then that also needs to be a seat at the table when decisions are made in critical ways. Special education and student services, wellness for our kids, critically important, no seat at the table when decisions are made. So we do need to retool. We do need to refocus on critical areas that are going to have an impact, and the right people need to be at the table when the decisions are made. And so with that, we need to retool as a district. We need to develop a way that breaks down our silos. And we have functions that do great work, but they do those work in silos. And so creating cross-functional teams that can go out into school clusters, that can serve school clusters consistently, and can be attuned to that cluster's unique needs will go a long way. So what that might look like is you may have a subject matter expert from mathematics, one from literacy, one from human resources, one from special education, maybe somebody who's focused on language development for our emergent multilingual learners, putting them together with a principal supervisor and targeting school improvement needs in a specific cluster. That's a difference maker. So what would one of those look like? Well, we've built a model, and we're using existing resources to flesh out that model. As to what that might look like, boots on the ground for a cluster like Watkins Mill, or a cluster like Bleak, or even a cluster that shares some staff like one for BCC and for Whitman. But this model is the way of the future and how we can break down some of that siloed work and start working together better as a team. None of this is going to happen without really robust professional learning and a lot of targeted support. But how do we deliver that professional learning? How do we get out to schools to provide that support? Well, we use these cross-functional teams to be the driver of that change, which kind of brings us to popcorn. Popcorn, you say? If you have spent any meaningful time in a school and you've walked down the halls, there is a smell that emanates from the classrooms in every single school across America after 1 p.m. And it's delicious. It's way better than broccoli, I promise you. And for me, the saltier and the butterier, the better. I absolutely love popcorn. And if my elementary school principal people and elementary school teachers are in the room, you know what I'm talking about because you guys are the purveyors of great popcorn. Am I wrong? No? I didn't think so. But there's an interesting thing about popcorn is that when you do it in one of these microwave bags, you get some pretty interesting results. And when you get to the end of that bag, not all of the kernels look the same. As a matter of fact, in the same heat, the same oil, and with the same time, you get different results. This is a great metaphor for our kids who are in the same classroom with the same teacher, with the same time, in the same school, but sometimes we get different results. What this tells us is that we do need to structure things differently so that all of our kids can pop, and that different kids require different levels of scaffolding and support to get there. Our student populations have changed, but not our demographic ones. Our students who receive services for disabilities, either an IEP or a 504, have grown exponentially. Our students who are accessing our ELD curriculum because they are emergent multilingual learners has grown exponentially. So capture this in your mind. Our total enrollment has gone down, but serving these complex needs has gone up. This explains a lot in terms of the challenges that we're facing and the needs that we need to address. When we're at our best, we are serving kids at any time, any place, any path, and at any pace. We've got a long way to go in that space, but I think that there's an intermediate step. I'm going to introduce a strategy that is going to be available to you in a whole spreadsheet that you can pick up on your way out the door. Not right now, because I want you to look at me, not the spreadsheet. And I want to show you a little bit about our materials and supply budget, which really hasn't changed for the last 20 years. The strategy has been this, that every school gets an amount per child, regardless of any characteristics, and that same amount every year for whatever number of kids that you have in the building. And it's not a great sum of money. It's not a whole lot for that school to operate on, and this is their paper budget, this is their science supply budget, this is their media budget, this is their art supply budget, and the numbers are pretty scarce. What I would propose is that we start ourselves on a path where we are accounting for differences in each school community by adding funds for every farm student, adding additional funds for every EML student, and adding additional funds for every student with disabilities on a weighted formula. This way, all of our schools will benefit. Every single school will get more resources than they did the year before, but the schools that are more highly impacted will receive more funds proportionate to the impact that they have. This will be a huge jump for us, and here's what it looks like. So when we look at elementary schools that are very similar, like Burtonsville Elementary School and Wingate Elementary School, they both have just a little over 600 students, except the number of farm students and the number of students with disabilities and the number of EML students is wildly different. And so what I would propose is that they do get additional resources, but that it is weighted for their student population. Schools like Briggs Cheney and Westland, where there are differences in the student populations, we account for that by providing additional funds so that the principal of the school and the educators in the school can provide more access to opportunities and resources in that school as a result. Schools like Watkins Mill and Sherwood, they are pretty close together in terms of the number of kids, but in terms of how we provide additional resources for those schools could be very, very different. And we could be smarter about this. And we could use an equitable distribution of resources to account for these student differences and provide our educators with a little bit of a leg up in how we support those classrooms. So, are you ready? I know it's been a long ride, and thank you for bearing with me. Folks are coming around right now because they're going to pass out something new. They're going to pass out a summary document for our budget. This summary document is a little bit different than what you've seen before. This is the new Table 1A. I had a great conversation with some constituents recently who wanted a restoration to Table 1A in the budget. And I went and I looked at previous budgets to try and find Table 1A. And I was like, wow, this does not have near the amount of information I hoped it would. And so we created something better. Now, most budgets in summary form are usually broken up into two main categories: revenues, where our money comes from, and expenditures, where our money is going. So this is the same, except that I'm going to break it down even a little bit further. We will still have revenues, but we will have 5 sections, 4 of which will be types of expenditures. We will have non-discretionary expenditures, the things we must do; blueprint expenditures, the things we should do; and we will also have discretionary expenditures, the things we'd like to do. But before all of that, we will add something completely new for MCPS: changes that we've made to the base budgets and reductions. So I want to showcase some of those things for you right now, and I want to walk through some of the highlights in our budget proposal. So thank you for bearing with me. It's important for you to know that the Board of Education set me on a path for this budget development, and that they set priorities that they wanted addressed in this budget, and you will see these priorities reflected in our budget expenditures that are proposed this evening. So I want to thank the board and tell you that your priorities were honored and that you should see those reflected. The first section of our budget, and if you're looking at it, is in the first 6 lines, and along the column you'll see those rows are numbered. It is revenue, and I want to talk a little bit about revenue. And we've kind of addressed this already, that we are projecting our revenue to go a little bit down at the federal level and be somewhat flat, a little bit of an increase at the state level, and we're making a pretty substantial request of county government. I do want to put that request into context, though. Back right at the beginning of the housing market bubble burst fiscal fiasco, which we still haven't recovered from, nearly 2/3, actually just short of 2/3 of our budget was comprised of county funds. Today, it's 64%, and it just may feel like just a little bit of a percent difference, but that percent difference is certainly felt, and what we are trying to ask for is restoration of getting back to that space of where we were prior to that fiscal collapse, because we still haven't recovered, and we are kind of still paying for some of the issues that happened during that time. And so we've outlined that for you, and I'll go into detail as to what this looks like at the very end, but I do want to highlight our revenue section in terms of county, state, federal, our enterprise or special revenue funds, which are things like our food services budget, and then other sources, which may be fees or things that we collect. The next section of our budget are changes to the base. And this is after a lot of inspection and a lot of hard work and a zero-based budgeting exercise. We are looking at a lot of broccoli in terms of our budget expenditure. And I would like to congratulate MCEA President David Stein for being the first to actually eat the broccoli, which is maybe an indication that I'm going on a little long. So thank you for the heads up, and enjoy the broccoli, as dry as it may be. But this is an adjustment of $7 million and a reduction in our base budget. This is not an easy reduction. This was a hard reduction. This is trying to honor our commitment to being better stewards of our taxpayer dollar and to find ways in which we can serve the community better with more streamlined central services. This is not an easy move for us, but maybe a necessary move for us. The next section, and I'm just going to highlight a few of these items because you'll see that this is the biggest section in our budget, is our non-discretionary budget. And as I would like to refer to this as our keeping the lights on budget. And Mr. Stein, you have inspired our county council members and our county executive that they too are broccoli eaters as well. So they might be sending us a message about austerity in this moment. The first big one is a placeholder of several different lines, and you'll see these lines are really collapsed, and these are a placeholder for our contracts with our association. We do not have ratified agreements with our association. There's still work to do in that space, but we are accounting for a 3.25% increase, along with a step which is in line with what our county government employees are requesting. So in an effort to be on par with county government and to find parity with county government, this is a pretty substantial ask. It is a pretty big ask, but it is on par with county government counterparts and their request as well. The next one is touchy, and it's big. It's our employee benefits plan and the need to backfill and repair our plan. Our plan does need work. We are a self-insured health insurance plan. We do need to work with our associations in finding a good way to stop making this hole worse. Right now, this is a very sizable $80 million hole in our operating budget. It is painful. It is hard to face. But there's a real danger that this hole could become a $165 million hole if we don't take drastic measures to reduce it. So we do need to have a plan to address the plan itself, and then we also need to have a plan on how we're going to backfill the space to date. This is going to take multiple years. As a matter of fact, a lot of our budget initiatives you're going to see in multiple year increments, even though these are very big problems with very big numbers attached to them. We are offering multiple year solutions because we know that we can't solve everything all in one year. Probably the hardest thing for me to explain to folks who are not budget folks is to explain lapse and turnover. Lapse and turnover is taking the money from, or I should say the savings from vacant positions and reallocating it to other places in the budget to backfill for when there's a budget deficit. This is actually a very effective strategy from one year to the next, but it is something that does need to be repaired if it is a multiple year approach. And for us, because of some budget shortfalls, we've had to do this. And this has not been the most savory way to approach our budget, but it is something that we need to look at and that we need to be better fiscal stewards and create some internal controls about how we address salary lapse and turnover. The next position reclassification is about our paraprofessionals. Our paraprofessionals are a very unique employee group in our school system. they have a wide range of responsibilities. And this reclassification is critically important because we need to account for the different roles that our paraprofessionals do, and we need to differentiate our compensation to align with those roles. Some of our paraprofessionals have clerical and academic responsibilities. Other paraprofessionals have toileting and high-needs special education requirements. We need to account for those differences. We need to be good stewards and of them in the workplace as well. Another big painful expenditure for us is special education. I have not attended a public meeting this year where special education wasn't a part of the conversation, and on a lot of different levels. There is a real need for us to meet the needs of students who cannot be educated in the regular school setting and that need private placement support. And there is also a real need to support the classrooms that are in MCPS. Something that I heard time and time again this fall, and that most of the people that I'm sharing a space with this evening have heard through emails and folks that have genuine concern about their kids or the kids in their classroom, is how poorly staffed we are in special education. And I kept thinking to myself, my gosh, this can't be the case, because clearly we're following the guidelines that are in place to support special education. The sad reality is that we have not kept pace, and that we are not staffing to the guidelines that we should for special education. And this is a huge, huge issue for us. It is so significant that it is 188 classroom teachers and 500 paraprofessionals. We are very behind in how we meet the needs of our students with disabilities. Similarly, how we meet the needs of our emergent multilingual learners. We are 47 teaching positions away from where we say that we are supposed to staff. These are big gaps that need to be addressed. I mentioned earlier ongoing facility maintenance needs. We've got a strategy on how we might send teams to different buildings to clear work orders and to help the building maintenance staff. This has been an effective strategy in other places, so we think that there's a great approach here. This really is a $179 million problem in our school district, and our proposal is that we contribute a little bit this year, and that we contribute a little bit more next year, and we contribute a little bit more the year after that. For the next dozen years, that we commit to a plan to fully funding maintenance in our school district so that our kids can walk into those learning environments and feel safe, welcome, and included. The next section in our budget is the blueprint. No surprises here is that we have already committed $40.6 million in our budget to the blueprint, but new this year in fiscal 26 is $10.9 million of that. The majority of that is committed to Pillar 1, which is early childhood expansion. This would net us 28 additional classrooms, 13 general ed and 13 general ed and 15 special education early childhood pre-K classrooms. This is a part of the blueprint expectation. There are other expectations with the blueprint that we're less excited about, but we know that this is a great investment because kids that have had a pre-K exposure, they arrive in kindergarten ready to learn, and their experience is a much more positive one. There are pillars also within the blueprint that don't have a dollar figure associated with them. They had expenditures in other years, but they don't have new dollar figures associated with them this year. And in full disclosure, we want to share all of that with you. There is something that is a legislative priority for MCPS. One of the requirements in the blueprint in pillar number 3 is that we cover the cost of AP and IB tests for every student who takes them. And don't get me wrong, that's great. But is that our number one priority as a district? Could those monies be used in other places, especially for those who can afford to take those tests? We think yes. So This is also a legislative priority for us, not just a budget priority for us, because that's programmed in as a must-do because it's tied to the blueprint. Our last section is discretionary. Now, here's the funny thing about discretionary funds. Anything that's in the discretionary side of the budget, you're not going to see a broccoli next to. The other ones, you had some broccolis. I'm just kind of pointing them out because there were a lot of broccolis in there. But our discretionary budget, these are the things that we would like to do. These ideas are really great ideas. They would help make our school system better. They are worthy investments. They really would help. But there is no law, there is no policy, there is no requirement, there is no regulation that mandates that we do these things. These are a choice. And so that's a hard and heavy lift. But it's one that we should look at because these ideas can help us move the needle. The first one is that differentiated school-based allocation for equity. For $5.7 million, we can transform the learning experience for our schools by adding just a little bit to the principal's bank account and give them the edge to meet the needs of our learners. School security. At just about every public meeting that I've attended, everyone asks, what are you doing for school security? Well, there's a lot that we're doing for school security, but we do need help to implement a lot of things too. Our middle schools, our elementary schools, and even some of our high schools could really benefit from additional security assistance in a meaningful way to help bridge that gap and make our learning environments safer for our kids. It's a big part, but there is no requirement that we do it. Making sure that we have a great program plan and equitable distribution of great programs in our school district. We need to make sure that we study this with intent, and we know that intentionality is going to come at a little bit of a cost, so we need to make sure that we're covering that. This may seem like something that may be an issue of the past, but I promise you that this is an issue of today. The state has a requirement that we have menstrual hygiene products in all of our restrooms. That is absolutely critical, but there is this many dollars committed to doing that. So it is on us to fill the gap for this unfunded mandate and for us to commit the resources necessary so that this doesn't come out of the principal's bank account and so that other materials and supplies for education aren't interrupted because we are meeting the basic needs of the students that we serve. We are very proud of the work that our kids are doing in our CREA program. They are making great things happen for themselves and for their families. Our CREA program is a day and night program where students who are newcomers to the United States can access industry certifications and GED programming. We would like to expand this programming and commit recognized budgetary funds. Right now, we cobble this budget together from lots of different sources, and we would like to make this a part of our regular operating system. Similarly, we see great utility in virtual learning. There are a lot of opportunities that have been unexplored for us. There are a lot of great classes that we offer in many of our high schools that kids can't access because of where they attend school, and we could bridge that gap with virtual learning and distance learning. We started a program that expanded blended and virtual learning for students that were medically fragile. We see some utility in expanding that space and making sure that we have great options available to our kids, but we have to budget for these things. And we have to make sure that there is funds dedicated in that space. So all of that brings us to some very big numbers. I'm proposing a $3.6 billion budget that does have an increase, a total increase of $2.96 million, and a local request that is $285 million, and this is a big ask. It is a big request because the needs are big, very big. And if I were you, and you wanted to know more about this budget, I would ask a lot of questions, and I would be engaged, and I would want to know the fine-tooth details about this budget. And so we're going to be doing some things different this year. We are going to be releasing this budget in January in a Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets format so that people can drill down to the number of origin and they can see for themselves where our budget is coming from and where every line is in our budget. And you may be asking, why are you waiting till January? Well, we are in the middle of a reorganization, and personnel is a huge expense, and we want to make sure that we get our personnel right before we put all of our stuff out on display. But I would also be asking, what kind of commitments are you willing to make in exchange for this big investment in our school system? Well, there's a couple of big commitments that I think are really important. The first one is that recognition that we're not asking for a budget that is going to be innovative. We're not asking for a budget that is actually going to move MCPS light years ahead. That's not this budget. This is a broccoli budget. This is a budget that fills holes. This is a budget that solves problems. It doesn't solve problems completely, but it definitely puts us on the path to solving a lot of those problems. And you also have the commitment that we are going to bite this apple or eat this apple one bite at a time and not all at once. Many of these solutions that we've presented we can implement over many years, and that we need to take a stab at some of these efforts right now in order to have solvency. That is particularly important. We need to be in a place where we have fiscal stability, but we have to make those investments in a meaningful way. And there are also some return on investment pieces that are noteworthy. You have seen this slide before in previous budget presentations in MCPS. This stems from a George Washington University study that was done about the economic impact of MCPS, and it shows quite clearly that there is a return on investment in MCPS. That for every dollar invested in MCPS, it generates more in our local economy, and I think that that's good. But I think that this community expects more. As a matter of fact, I think that this community demands more of its school system than just an economic benefit. So I have two commitments that I'm willing to share tonight, and they are big commitments, and they're going to require the support of everyone in this room and everyone in our community in order to make them happen. Our first commitment is a money-back guarantee, that by 2035, MCPS will reimburse families for the cost of remedial mathematics and literacy classes for any MCPS graduate at Montgomery College. This is a bold commitment, but if we do our job well, this is for the low, low cost of zero. I think we can do it. And I'll do you one better. I've got a second commitment, that we need to be a school system with 4 or more. That as judged by the Maryland report card, all of our schools need to be 4 stars or 5 stars. And by the way, when we hit all of our schools being 4-star or 5 stars, we are going to make sure that all of them are 5 stars, because every single kid in Montgomery County deserves a great education. And we need to create the conditions for our educators and staff to do their best work so that they can make this happen for our school system. I know that they can. I know that we can. And if there's any community in America that can pull this off, it's us. But it is going to take all of us committed to working together to make that happen. These are 2 really big commitments. And they are 2 really big, bold goals for our future. And in the next 10 years, I know that we can do this if we work together. This is not the end-all be-all of budgets, I promise you. What you didn't see in this budget is you didn't see anything about class size, because we need to take a hard look at our staffing standards, and we need to figure out what is the right class size for MCPS. You didn't see an awful lot about our strategic plan, because we haven't adopted one yet. So we have work to do in this space. We also need to take a hard look about how we can improve special education services, not just meet the minimum standard, and how we can improve our EML services, not just meet the minimum standard. So fighting to get to the floor needs to be a thing of the past. We need to be reaching for the stars. So with that, we have a series of events that I would like to invite you to. The first are budget work sessions and budget hearings for our Board of Education as they unpack this very robust and very ambitious budget plan and a timeline for their adoption of the operating budget. And then it goes to our funding partners in the county government, where they will go through a similar process themselves. In the meantime, we've got a few things that we'll still be working on. In particular is the first item, and this is where I could use your help, because there will be a lot of desire in our community to make everything about a number. And what people will forget is that there are children with need behind that number. And so our work needs to be about elevating the need and elevating the kids who are behind that need and the hardworking educators who are behind that need, and not making it just about a number. We get that the number's big. We know that the number is big. It's a big ask. It sure is. But the need is there. And it's my job to present a needs-based budget. And so to that end, it is my pleasure to present a needs-based budget and to clearly communicate what we need to be successful in the next fiscal year and where we need to go as a district to unleash the potential of Montgomery County. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I would like to invite you to engage in this process. Reach out to the decision makers in this process. There are some wonderful email addresses that we'll also put on the internet for you, and invite you to be a part of that. And make sure that your voice counts. And we would love to hear from you over the next several weeks and months. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, and thank you for spending time with us during this pre-holiday season and giving up time with your family to talk about kids in our wonderful county. Montgomery County is a great place to live, work, and learn thanks to you. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.